Hi, I'm Siri. Welcome to Do Lunch Online. We're at the Frank H. McClung Museum located on the University of Tennessee campus in Knoxville, Tennessee. The presentation today is Ancient Egypt, the Eternal Voice. In this exhibition, the ancient Egyptians still speak to us through passages taken from their writings and through many objects they left behind. A fine collection of both original objects and some replicas which complement them are arranged in this gallery by subject categories such as history, daily life, religion, and writings. While their kings and queens continue to captivate us, the ordinary, hard-working ancient Egyptians are no less fascinating. On one side of the gallery, a sampling of their tools and crafts are displayed, which are illustrated with scenes from tomb paintings. Most of the objects in these exhibit cases were manufactured more than 3,000 years ago. The traditional division of the kings of Egypt into some 30 dynasties or royal families goes back to the Greco-Egyptian historian priest Manetho, who lived when Egypt was ruled by the Greek king Ptolemy I about to 280 BC. Manetho compiled a formal history of Egypt, the Aegyptiaca, beginning with the kings of the early dynastic period, 3200 BC. Modern historians have regrouped in innovative ways Manetho's classification into wider periods of dynastic history, including times of relative stability and centralized government, the kingdoms, and times of disturbance, the intermediate periods. A statement by Papyrus Anastasi, Amun-Re, judges the earth with his finger, and speaketh to the heart. He assigneth the sinner to hell, but the righteous to the west. Human ancestors, Homo erectus, first entered Egypt and the Nile Valley around 700,000 years ago. Periods of increased rainfall permitted the expansion of the Paleolithic. Hunters and gatherers far into the areas that are now desert. Around 7000 BC, environmental conditions created grasslands that permitted the spread of domesticated plants, emmer wheat, barley and flax, and animals, cattle, sheep and goats, from the Middle East in the adoption of hunting and agricultural lifestyles, a cultural stage called the Neolithic. The gods and attendant religious customs and practices formed an intricate part of daily existence and were paramount to the Egyptian worldview. Beginning in the prehistoric period through the long historic era, the blessings and goodwill of the gods, so essential to the well-being, were eagerly sought. An astonishing multiplicity of deities developed, at least over 1,000 of them, and the myths surrounding them became so complex that even the Egyptians found them difficult to comprehend. Deities took on many guises, including animal, human or other forms. Sometimes they fused and became composites, with animal, insect or bird heads and human bodies, making them human in appearance and activity. Each held tremendous power. The remarkable skills of Egyptian artists craftsmen can be seen in the numerous examples of their work which survive. These so-called minor arts include metalworking, carpentry, leatherworking, stone carving, ceramic production and the preparation of papyrus. Paper in the ancient world was called papyrus, a word probably derived from the Egyptian papyreo, meaning that of Pharaoh, now rare in Egypt. The plant, Cyperus papyrus, grew abundantly in the marshes of the Nile Valley, and particularly in the delta of Lower Egypt. Religious beliefs reflected for concepts which dominated Egyptian thought: creation, resurrection, procreation and kingship. They defined religion through the visible forms of associated gods and goddesses. Particular gods, such as Amun-Re, Thebes, and Ptah, at Memphis were the patrons of Pharaoh and stood at the head of the Egyptian pantheon. Others were the official deities of the 42 nomes. Even the smallest villages worshipped a favorite local god or goddess. The Egyptians built scores of temples as cult centers where the divine images of specific deities were placed. The last of the Neolithic cultures, The Bradarian, 5000 to 4000 BC, laid the foundations for the pre-dynastic cultures and ultimately, pharaonic civilization. Burial in tombs and exotic grave goods foreshadowed the later elaborate mortuary cults as focal points of wealth, authority, and religious beliefs. Beginning in the early dynastic period and throughout most of dynastic Egypt, omnipotent god-kings, or pharaohs, governed Egypt. State stability and unity depended upon Pharaoh, the son of Re, the sun god and incarnation of the god Horus, son of Osiris. As a living god, Pharaoh was the crucial link between his human subjects and the gods. Pharaoh was the state, its owner and absolute ruler, whose divine word was law. Daily life at the palace bustled with administrative activity and ceremonial functions. As chief administrator and commander-in-chief of the army, Pharaoh directed the efficient use of manpower for ongoing building and irrigation projects, participated in numerous religious observances and theological decisions, oversaw the nomes, districts, and their monarchs, and met ever-present border threats. A successful pharaoh made sound decisions, inspired his subjects, ensured rich soil, stimulated profitable commerce and consumption of goods, and maintained peace within each its borders. The Greek historian Herodotus, 484 through 420 BC, described the gifts of the Nile River, writing, "Egypt is the gift of the Nile." Civilization in the Nile Valley was profoundly conditioned by the natural contrasts of the country, the beneficent course of the sun, and most of all, by the rhythms of the great Nile River. Since early times, the river has dominated daily life as the center of Egypt's very existence and its life-giving artery. Originating in the falls and lakes of equatorial Africa, the Nile cuts its solitary way along a narrow bed of Nubian sandstone and through the vast rainless expanse of Egypt limestone tablelands. Feeding the river are clear White Nile and turbid Blue Nile rivers. The Nile Valley ranges from over a half-mile wide in the south to 15½ miles wide in the north. For about half of its course, it has no tributaries and little rain, yet it does not dry up. On either side of the mighty waterway lie the vast desert plateaus, the Libyan Desert to the west, patterned by fertile oases, the Arabian Desert to the east, with its rich mineral deposits and stone quarries, and the Nubian Desert to the south. The administration and development of the social, economic, and political structure of the country depended on the river. In addition to the rich silty soil the Nile deposited annually along its banks, and its teeming animal life, it provided essential transportation for many purposes, including commerce and communication. And in a land of scant rainfall, the Nile watered the agricultural fields through the Egyptian simple but efficient irrigation system. So it was that the Nile lavished Egypt with constant inspiration and nourishment. The greatness of ancient Egypt would never have come to be but for the bounty of the Nile River.